don't see that.
I can see it. It has started.
Fantastic. Okay, then I will get us started today. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming today. My name is Lindsay, and I recently received my master's in education here at Bishop's University. Today, we are going to hear from Trevor Gulliver. He will be sharing a variety of drama activities that can be used in second language classrooms, and he's going to share his insights from that in his teaching. Dr. Gulliver became a professor in the School of Education in 2009. Before coming to Bishop's, he taught English as a second language in South Korea and Canada, and has worked in numerous language teacher professional development projects with teachers from around the world. He is very excited to be involved in the growth of the new BA double major in English second language teaching and secondary education, which is being offered through the School of Education. The presentation should last around 30 minutes, and during the presentation, please only write your questions in the chat. We're going to get to questions at the end of the presentation. At the end of the presentation, we take live questions. We will review the chat and see what questions are there, so you'll have plenty of opportunity. During the presentation, we please ask that everyone keep their mics off, just so there's no interruptions. And although we do love to see faces, so if you're willing to keep your camera on, thank you so much. We love to see your faces. We are recording, though, just so you know. We record because we put this online, this video online afterwards, so other people can have access to the resource. So if you do have a problem with that, feel free to close your camera if you feel uncomfortable being recorded. If you would like to be notified of other presentations that we're doing in the future, please write your email in the chat, and we will make sure it's added to our email list, and you'll be notified of future presentations. Just a reminder that those normally take place either Wednesday or Thursday, the first Wednesday or Thursday of the month at 4 p.m. As just a reminder, the For Real project aims to generate new ideas in thinking, doing, and being as teachers. And the idea is to create resources for educators and for teachers alike. And all of this is done through our website. It can be found by simply typing For Real into Google. And I also will add the link into the chat. All right, Dr. Gulliver, if you would like to begin, I will leave it to you.
Well, thank you very much. It's nice to see some familiar faces and some new faces as well. Welcome to my For Real presentation on drama techniques for language teaching. As you've just heard, my name is Trevor Gulliver. I'm a colleague of Dr. Sunny Laus at Bishop's University in the TESOL program. Bishop's University is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Abenaki people. In this presentation, I'm going to be talking about drama techniques and activities that could be used as part of an ESL, and why drama has for so long been a part of second language teaching. In fact, as long as there's been an ESL, there have been drama techniques. I'd say they're the more traditional techniques, actually, in English as second language teaching. Usually my research is on something quite different. I did my doctoral research, and much of my research since then has been on critical discourse analysis of language textbooks, of the discourses in language textbooks, particularly the nationalist discourses in language textbooks, how some of our discourses about Canada can be seen as racist, sexist, homophobic, ageist, transphobic, and using critical discourse analysis to undermine them. So that's something I usually write about. This presentation comes more from my teaching practice and from a course that I really didn't want to teach. When I first went to Bishop's in 2009, I really didn't want to teach the course that was already in the new program that we were starting up, the TESOL program, the course Drama Techniques for Language Teaching. I didn't want to teach it at first, and for the first few years, it wasn't part of my workload. We had some excellent contract faculty teaching it. And I saw students taking the course with that other instructor. And I saw these students in first year before they took the course. I saw them later in second or third year after they took the course. And I could see, especially amongst the Francophone students, how much more confidence they had, how much more spontaneity they had, um, how much more comfortable they were jumping up in front of a class full of Anglophones to present an activity or share an idea or take part in some off-the-cuff improv that I or a student had instigated. So in the end, I did end up teaching it. This is a screenshot of my Moodle page, which I really like my Moodle page. I use buttons and so to avoid that wall of text you sometimes see on Moodle. Um, I ended up teaching the course and I loved it. In this course, students would half of the class time was devoted to activities that the students would try. They'd come up with activities themselves and get class marks for leadership, or they'd participate in other people's activities and get class marks for participation. And then they could write reflections on the activities they either tried uh, uh, or participated in, the ones they either led or participated in. And each uh, third week, they would post videos of them participating in some of the activities in this Channel B forum. And we could go and we could watch some of these videos that we had done or that others had done. Um, and Yeah, all of the things that we did were silly improvs, role playing, skit writing, performance, mime, charades. All of it, a lot of it could be incredibly silly, which is why I really didn't want to teach this course when I first came to Bishop's. Even though I had done drama throughout university, I had been involved in the Fourth Line Theater Company when I was a university student, a theater company that's still going on today. It's been incredibly successful. I was comfortable at one point in my life being silly in public, and somewhere along the lines that disappeared, and I wasn't as comfortable, and I wasn't really ready to teach this course. And I kind of ended up getting, uh, I felt stuck teaching it at first, and then ended up loving teaching it. And I think it's reinvigorated me a lot. And during the pandemic, a lot of students told me that going online into these chat rooms and playing very silly games and trying very silly activities with each other actually really helped them hold it together. The fun, the foolishness, the creativity, the playfulness helped them during a very difficult time. So I guess here's one question you could talk about in the chat. Are you comfortable looking silly in front of your students? And how silly are you willing to look? I don't think that one could teach drama in the way that we want to teach drama in a second language classroom or for second language students without being willing to get a little silly. I also think every teacher, second language teacher or not, should actually take some drama courses as part of their program. I think I've seen the difference it makes in my students, and I think it would make a big difference for a lot of students. Okay, so I'd like to start off by suggesting that drama and language teaching have always gotten along, that though we often think of translation, grammar analysis, memorization to be traditional language classes. I don't think that those are so much the traditional language classes. If we look at a lot of early language texts, it seems that there's always been more communicative language activities that were taking place, and a lot of those language activities involve drama. Now, I mean, for EFL, English as a foreign language specifically, uh, drama was part of the motivation for English as a foreign language. Shakespeare Mania made English a cool language to study in Germany in the 1700s. So part of the growth of the field of English as a foreign language was drama related. Um, with some other languages, if you look at some old textbooks, and with in doing discourse analysis on modern textbooks, I've also tried to look at some of the older ones. Uh, Claudius Holleband was a teacher of French and English, and he had the published, he had two different workbooks, the French Schoolmaster and the French Littleton. And these contained dialogues and plays for learning English. And the plays and dialogues would talk about things that were happening at the time. He tended to have really long scenes or really long, really long scenes that would involve all of the students in a class. Um, you could have like various things happening in different parts of the classroom, one after the other. So maybe 20 or 30 characters in a big wide scene. It's very different from modern textbooks, which tend to have many short dialogues. Another language teacher, Comenius, a teacher of Latin, said early on that teachers should bring things into the classroom. For example, he said, if you're doing a lesson on farm animals, bring the pig into the classroom, which, I don't know if we could do that anymore. But props, bringing props into the classroom has always been a part of second language teaching for many different reasons. I'm going to show some dialogues from some early second language textbooks and slow down a little and read them to you because I think they're a lot of fun. And these are little dialogues, little plays that illustrated interactive language functions like greetings. You could see the same kind of dialogue, I think, in a textbook today. It would look very different, but we'd use it today. Some of these dialogues brought up topics of interest, possibly to stimulate discussion. We might use a dialogue to start to show people, model how to engage in a conversation about daily events. I could see a very similar dialogue in a textbook today for a similar purpose. And another dialogue I'm going to show you encouraged cultural integration and language practice outside the classroom. And I think we could see dialogues today that said, hey, you know what would be a good way for you to learn the language outside the classroom and have the students engage with that dialogue. So here's one from a 1551 English-Spanish double manual. So it would have Spanish on one side, English on the other. John, I pray God send ye a good day. And I, Hermes, wish to you a prosperous day. How do you do? Ask you how I do? I fare well, thanks be to God. So obviously, this is not how we say hello these days. Maybe it should be. It's not. But using a dialogue to introduce a language function is something that happens all the time in textbooks. Here's one dialogue from a textbook for Huguenot refugees. A lot of the early students of English as a second language were French Huguenot refugees fleeing France, Protestants settling in England, and then many of them became teachers of French or teachers of English in England and teachers of French in England as well. So here's a dialogue that talks about current events. It talks about the sickness and the dearth, which be nowadays almost all throughout France. So topics of interest to the students, topics of current event related topics. And this one I love because it's introducing a new cultural phenomena, coffee houses, which, where people didn't really know what these were and how they were used. And it's encouraging the participants to, well, one of the participants explains to the other how in coffee houses you can have all these conversations. There's lots of people. Sometimes people get up and make speeches. There's things to read and all sorts of ways to interact and engage. And it seems like a dialogue that's encouraging students to go out in the evening and integrate culturally and engage in language activities. And I could see all of these ending up in a textbook to some similar things ending up in textbooks today. In teaching methods, the direct method had props. James Asher, if you know TPR and TPR storytelling, James Asher is associated with TPR. His entire thing involves mime, involves charades, involves non-verbal demonstrations. Audiolingual method had quite long dialogues, which involved a lot of listen and repeat, and fairly extended practice. I think modern dialogues end up being a lot shorter than those. Desuggestopedia if you're familiar with Desuggestopedia, it's a bit of an odd one, a bit of an odd, perhaps language teaching method. But one of the things I really liked about it is that uh, Lozanoff, the founder of Desuggestopedia, encouraged teachers to have students take on another identity. I find this very interesting. I don't know if I would do it in my classes, but the students were encouraged to pick target language names, jobs, and personalities. Uh, and so the idea was that if you were no longer yourself, if you were taking on a different character, a different personality, role playing as a speaker of the language you were learning, you would let go of all your inhibitions and insecurities about not being a speaker of the language you're learning and being simply a learner. This is a warm up from one of Asher's lesson plans. And this is just Asher or the teacher at the front of the room uh, giving imperative sentences to students and the students getting up and acting it out. And I think Asher's classes must have been a hoot. Here it is. Pablo, drive your car around Miyako and honk your horn. Jeffe, throw the red flower to Maria. Maria, scream. Rita, pick up the knife and spoon and put them in a cup. Eduardo, take a drink of water and give the cup to Elaine. It's chaotic. Sounds like a lot of fun. Um, There's also built on TPR, there's a TPR storytelling method, which in some ways which extends TPR quite nicely, I think, and it gives students opportunities to produce speech. And in this TPR storytelling method, the students take a script and one person might read it while the other students mime or act out the story that they're reading. How many activities on this page? So we're getting into more communicative language teaching here. How many activities on this page have you done with classes, and how many would you do? I guess put that in the chat. How many have you, and how many would you? There's 9. So out of 9, how many have you participated in or led as a teacher, and how many would you use in your classes, present or future? Um, I'm going to go ahead and show another activity that I would say is quite familiar to us, and I'd call an example of drama in communicative language teaching. Simple situational role plays. We have in communicative language teaching, I think there's a lot of role play use. Here's one. Imagine you're a roommate. You're looking for a room, uh, and then the student who has a room must respond to your requests. Um, so student A imagines they're looking for a roommate, student B imagines they're looking for a room, and then they have all the details of the room and they engage in a dialogue, a role play around these details. This kind of thing looks very familiar, I think, to anyone who's worked with communicative language teaching textbooks. So I think it's pretty easy to argue that drama and language teaching have kind of always gotten along. But why has drama been such a good long-term partner to language teaching? There's a couple of definitions that I've used in the Drama for Language Teaching course. Um, drama, drama includes a wide range of oral activities that have an element of creativity present, and that's a pretty broad definition. The second one, any kind of activity where learners are asked either to portray themselves or to portray someone else in an imaginary situation. That one I think comes a little closer to the kinds of narrowing a range of activities that we could say are drama for language classrooms. I think that definition kind of covers it. Um, oops. The kinds of activities where learners are asked either to portray themselves or to portray someone else in an imaginary situation. I think we could expand on that a little bit. Any activity in which students are asked to share their imaginations about these things. I'm not sure if you know the speaking mnemonic. This is a Delheims, a sociolinguist, used the mnemonic speaking to talk about all the ways in which context or language changes in relation to context. If you want to talk about context, you could talk about things like where people are, who they are, why they're communicating, what they're doing, the tone in which they're communicating, the mode through which they're communicating, and the genre in which they're communicating. And yeah, Delheim's speaking mnemonic identifies these different things. So all of these things are about creating a meaningful context for language use. And drama activities sometimes have us pretend we're ourselves someplace else, or pretend we're someone else, or pretend we're trying to communicate for a particular purpose, or we're trying to do something, or pretend we're angry, pretend we're happy, and uh, pretend we're on the telephone, etc. We often end up having our students engage in activities in which they have to imagine something about the context. And all of these are really about the context. So, I mean, no doubt there are other reasons that drama and ESL have always gotten along. But I think a lot of what drama is doing is creating a meaningful context for language use. Okay, so my argument as to why drama and language teaching have always gotten along is that drama activities provide context and purpose for language use. And probably there are some other reasons. And again, feel free to add something into the chat for us to discuss later. Um, so contextualized and purposeful communication supports language acquisition. And again, I think everything I'm saying today are pretty much most of us would agree with or understand where I'm coming from. In second language acquisition, possibly uh, at the level of what's happening in the brain, at levels at subconscious levels, one possible driver of acquisition is the making of form meaning links. When we, at some level, whether fully conscious or not, attach a meaning to a form. So the form, and when we attach a meaning to a form, it always takes place within a context, because the form we choose in one context to tell somebody to leave, beat it, might be very different than the form we use in another context, making the same request, saying, would you mind giving me some space? So the form that we attach to the meaning should always be understood in terms of context as well, and only makes sense really, and is only appropriate really within context. Have you seen this meme circulate? I've seen this on Facebook many times now. It comes around for once in a while, and there are two people looking at the same number. For those of you who can't see the screen right now, and one says the number is either 6 or 9, and depending on where you stand. The argument that the meme makes is that uh, that sometimes meaning is entirely based on how you look at things. But I think that how you look at things often is a matter of looking at the context. It's not that uh, each of these people's views is equally valid. Once the context appears, we have a sense of what even the smallest bit of language means. Neither of them can identify what this bit of language means without a context around it to give it meaning. Okay, so I think I'm going to be winding up just in that 20 to 25 minutes. I think I was said to stick to. If you have any questions for me for after I finish the presentation, or for discussion with everyone after I finish the presentation, please put them in the chat. I'm going to talk a little bit about principles of well, Rod Ellis has 10 or 11 principles of instructed language learning, which I think are very well founded in an understanding of second language acquisition. They have a balance in terms of different perspectives on things like the role of form versus the role of meaning. And I'm just going to take a few of these principles and talk about drama techniques and the role of context in relation to these principles. I think drama techniques can be part of a very principled approach to second language teaching. So principle two in Ellis's Principles of Instructed Language Learning is that instruction needs to ensure that learners focus predominantly on meaning. And principle number four says that instruction needs to be predominantly directed at developing implicit knowledge of the L2 while not neglecting explicit knowledge. Now, decontextualized language is less meaningful. Drama is about creating meaningful context and situations, and creating situations in which it's possible to mean things. Students' attention is focused on communication in many of these activities. So they're focused on communication, not on form. They're focused on meaning, not on form for many of these activities. Even when performing language from a script, the script itself is providing a meaningful context. So drama's main role, I think, is in providing context to the language that we're using in our second language classroom. Ellis's third principle is that instruction needs to ensure that learners also focus on form. A lot of the activities that are in the little booklet that I think we're going to share in the chat, I'll introduce the booklet in a bit. A lot of the activities in the booklet are really meaning-centered, really engaging in a communicative event. But in the course of a drama classroom, in the course of rehearsing, in the course of rewriting and reviewing and sharing and editing and practicing and eventually performing any kind of skit or script, there are lots of places for students to focus on form. And it makes sense to focus on form because the language we're working with is being prepared to share more widely, and the language we're the performance, the end performance gives purpose to attending to accuracy and pronunciation and all that form focused stuff. Another one of Ellis's principles is that successful instructed language learning requires extensive L2 input. And I think that drama can be a very good source of input for students. Not always the best, but not always the worst form. In a lot of drama, in watching plays that you're not participating in, you're not going to get a lot of modified input. And sometimes plays that we could bring students to watch might have language that's out of date or is at a faster pace than they're prepared for. But the input they are getting, it has visual support, it's contextualized, it may not be modified, but it is, I think, a relatively good source of input, and it certainly can be extensive. So in the course of or in a course that focuses on drama, we could have students watching plays, we could have students doing plays and then receiving input through the being present during rehearsals when other people are performing. We can have students taking turns in as participants or audience members in role plays, various theater games. We can read scripts and analyze scripts. I think a table read of a script is a fine drama activity. Whether the students are going to be performing it or not later, just a table read where we sit down and go through a script together and talk about the emotions. Studying genres before working in a genre, all of these things, I think, provide opportunities for extensive L2 input. And Ellis says that successful instructed language learning also requires opportunities for output. Many of the same activities again, rehearsing, acting in plays, again, table reads, writing scripts, planning performances and productions. all of these provide opportunities for output, um, reasons for that output, support in producing that output, high expectations for the quality of that output, and opportunities to reflect upon and gain further control of that output. Um, so I think those what we can do with the output, the opportunities, the space there in is very much supported by drama activities. Ellis also proposes that the opportunity to interact in the L2 is central to developing L2 proficiency. And I think some types of drama activities give us a lot of really unscripted, spontaneous, small group interaction, not the play itself, but the preparing for the play, getting getting a skit ready, deciding what to make your skit about, discussing what the character should do next. Those kinds of drama activities provide us a lot of unscripted, spontaneous, fluency-oriented interaction, which is great. And then we also have these scripted, planned, rehearsed, prepared forms of interaction, which can also be great. I want to share with you, I think the first time I was a part of an ESL classroom that used drama, and this time it kind of went a little wrong. One of my colleagues at a university in South Korea asked me to come in and help her grade because she had her students, they were writing scripts and they were going to perform the script in front of the audience of students. And she thought since they'd gone to all this work that it might be nice to have a couple of judges, she had multiple graders. So she had a couple of us coming in. And the students were coming and dropping a script down. We had a pile of their scripts, and then one at a time, they were getting up and performing the scripts they wrote. And some of them were great, some of them were, yeah. And then one group gets up, and I couldn't understand a word they're saying. And it sounds like English, but I couldn't understand a word they're saying. And I look at Shelley, and she's shaking her head too. She can't understand. So we start fishing around in the pile of scripts, and we find their names, and we pull it out. And there's a script written entirely in German that has obviously been downloaded from the internet. They had no idea. They're up there on stage performing a play entirely in German with English accents as much as possible, thinking that they're fulfilling or going to pass this assignment, that the teacher's never going to know that they've downloaded a script instead of writing one and have no idea what it says. So, and the reason I share that story is because what we might think of as using drama in the classroom, having students prepare a play, is perhaps having students perform a play is perhaps the least interactive, the least engaging, the least back and forth way of having students engage in drama activities. Drama activities shouldn't be about the product that comes out of it and showing the teacher the product that comes out of it. Drama activities should be about the process that goes into it and the teacher observing throughout the engagement and the interaction in those planning stages, rather than waiting until the performance stage and watching what the students come up with. Okay, so I did have another slide. It refers to the book which has been shared, and I hope some of you have looked at. Let's see. Yes, okay, so these activities, let me introduce them. These activities were produced as part of the drama class that I never wanted to teach. Um, the class that I tried to avoid for several years, and now I've taught 3 times, and I think we might get away with running it once more, but small classes these days are harder and harder to justify in times of never-ending austerity. So I might run this class one more time before we lose it, uh, which is a bit of a shame because I do feel that it really helps the Francophone students especially. But The class, the students had to contribute, or they had to reflect on activities they engaged in. They entirely had the choice of whether to submit them to a glossary on the Moodle page, knowing that activities submitted in the glossary would be shared freely and widely in the future. I think there's about 52 activities in that book. Some of the ones that I like, I'm listing right here. The absurd Weather Channel activity. That one, I've seen it done, and it can be very hilarious. The characters and situations activity. I'll let you look at each of these. I'm just going to flag a few of them, and then I'm going to ask you if you see any in the book that you like. So the characters and situations activity, the students draw a character, draw a situation, and then have to role play Frankenstein in the shopping mall or whatever they end up drawing from the card pile. Commercial recasting is a fun one. They start with an existing commercial, they write down the lines, and then they try recasting the commercial with themselves. So it could be also commercial auditioning. Who's going to do the best version of this commercial? An improvised role play where they play on the student council. The students have presented in the book. I like this one, entirely original student contribution, monologue from a song. They take a song that tells a story, and then they rewrite that story instead of in the song form as a monologue, and then perform the monologue. One line at a time, I think, is a game where the students build a story one line at a time. 1 minute mime, they draw some cards and they act it out. Party quirks is just walking around the room socializing, but everybody has a special quirk. For example, says like a lot, or never really listens to what anyone else is saying. And then you just have to basically role play that one quirk in a normal conversational environment. In the end, we try to figure out what other people's quirks were. The taxi cab, I forget what's happening with the taxi cab one, but I've seen it done and it's a lot of fun, and it involves people getting in and out of the taxi cab and following a story. Two truths and a lie, two liars and a truth teller. Two truths and a lie is a classic ESL activity. Two liars and a truth teller is a variation where three people come up with the same, or three people agree on something that's true about one of them, and they all get up and say it. For example, three people get up and say, I've been to Japan twice, but only one of them has actually been to Japan, and the class has to interrogate the three and decide. These are some of the activities I liked in this compilation that I've shared with you. I'm going to turn off my screen, I think, and stop sharing the screen and see what's in the chat, because I haven't seen much.
There's a lot of activity there.
Was I sharing my screen that entire time?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
you were. And I
Okay.
figure, we can look at this too, and then maybe if people want to jump in with questions as well, so we can kind of mix it all together or highlight a comment they made, perhaps.
I just had a little panic because the shared screen button looked like it hadn't been flagged, or so I thought I just did that 20-minute presentation without showing you a single slide. No? Okay, good.
We wouldn't let you do that.
Oh, thank
We
you.
wouldn't do that to you.
Okay, I haven't looked at the chat at all. So, what's up?
I'm not sure you're missing much. I was making lots of silly comments about my own language experiences. The stuff that, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in and being totally rude.
No.
Jump in.
I think I just invited people to jump in.
Thank you so much for this. I was so excited because this brings flashbacks, really positive ones from when I was in high school, and I had a fabulous German teacher who did so many of those things that you're talking about, gave us identities, ich heiße Claudia. I was Claudia for 3 years. And what's really, I guess, serendipitous is I was sitting down with our partners in the Faculté des Lettres this week, trying to put together a course for our refonte. Our programs are undergoing a massive refonte. And one of the things that Geneviève Brisson, who's not here today, really wanted to do is put a lot more of the oral back into the English classes. And so we created this course that we titled Drama I can't remember what the title is, but it's exactly that, literature and drama for, the classroom, not having taught this ever. So this poor English prof and I were sitting there going, and I was like, well, it has to be really dynamic and interesting, and they have to be able to, not just read plays out loud, but maybe do some improv and some rants and some slam poetry and, really get a sense of that language. So this is just inspiring. To the talk today, I'm going to share the recording with the prof and whoever the chargé de cours is that takes this on. I would love your permission, or maybe we can talk about this afterwards, to share the resource that you've shared with us as a group. I would love
Oh, absolutely. The resource is meant to be shared.
Oh,
We're going to
brilliant.
put it on the website. Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah. And it's going to be improved on over time as well.
Yay.
I think that the next time I teach that course, I think I'm going to start with the resource and say we're building this and improving on it. Where before I've just been waiting until we had enough things submitted to share. So I mean, I think we're even stepping away from this course we have. I think it's really, really valuable. I think that having students, I think it might depend on your context, but we've got the TESOL program at Bishop's is largely Francophone students in the major inside of an English university. And I think that this course helped them with their confidence. The way I've been working the course, and I kind of like the way it's been working, is that the students have half an hour or half of the course at the beginning is often me talking about the language teaching, talking about my expectations, and then the other half of the course is the students trying out activities. And I don't give group marks. I give leadership marks and participation marks. Because you know how when you do group activities, you always have students saying, well, like so-and-so didn't do anything or so-and-so isn't there. Well, it doesn't matter. One of you is in charge. Your job is to, hey, just like a teacher in a classroom, get a bunch of people to try something. So wrangling up people and motivating them to try an activity is the big part of the teaching job. So on a weekly basis in the classroom, they have to convince their classmates to spend 15 minutes trying their idea enthusiastically. And the classmates get participation points. They're logged in as having participated in this activity, but the leadership mark is a big part of it. So I get away from the whole group project problem, and that half of the class is so much fun. It's fun to watch, but it's big. And even we have 30 students in a classroom made for 70, or the 70 can sit in. It's too noisy, too chaotic, too much going on, and students need to go find other spaces. So that's the biggest problem, I think, with this course, is we don't have space for it.
Those are all really, really helpful suggestions, and it's exactly what we've been talking about. It's, the space that we're doing this in, the number of students, how to get them to participate. So thank you. I'm so glad we're recording this because I'm going to show it to my partner prof.
Well, I'm glad it's useful.
Thank you. No, it's more than useful. It's fabulous.
It looks like Monica has a question.
Yeah. Thanks so much. I really, really enjoyed listening to the different things you've done, and thanks so much for sharing the resource. It's amazing. Bad dubbing theater is something I've sort of done before, and it's also hysterical. I love that. I think you should add it to your slide. But all that aside, what I wanted to say is that what I really like is how you underscored that it's not the performance itself, and that disastrous example from your colleague in South Korea is a great reason why, but it fits so perfectly with the objectives of the ESL curriculum when we're doing all of the preamble, all of the preparation work, all of the arguing over props that they need. And that's where we see all of that interaction happening that's so critical. And the other thing I wanted to say that I love about drama is that I find it lends itself so easily to differentiating instruction for different levels, right? Because if you're doing a big production, then students can kind of plug in. If they don't have a lot of language, they can plug in and contribute in ways that require less language. If they're very, very strong in English, they can plug in and challenge themselves with bigger roles, different kinds of engagement. Or even in a short role play, you kind of role play at the level you're at with your peer, right? And so it can be really elaborate or it can be really not elaborate too, depending on where you're at. So for me, that's the thing I love about drama, is the way it allows me to very easily differentiate, and everybody can kind of feel successful no matter what their ultimate product, kind of lands at.
I think de-emphasizing the product is a very important part of bringing drama into classrooms. And I was thinking about this. I didn't prepare a slide, but I was thinking about you, Monica, with this process drama, process approaches to drama, where the part of the goal is to use drama to communicate about certain subjects. So, and rather than being worried about whether this is going to end up on stage being watched by an audience, just like role playing difficult situations, role playing controversial, putting, if you had something you wanted students to critically engage in, then having them think, oh, well, at the end of this, we're going to be standing up and sharing everything we've said with the whole audience, kind of would put a damper on that level of openness to experiment and to explore. So some types of drama actually really de-emphasize that, and I think would go well with second language classrooms as well.
Yeah. I'm sorry, can I ask a quick follow-up too? It's my last question, but just from where Claudia, and I'm going to call Flippa Claudia from now on, that's it, where they're looking at incorporating this. So in your program, Trevor, is this an optional course?
It's currently one of our required courses for the TESOL majors, and it's on the list for the TESOL minors.
Okay. Yeah, because it would be a shame to see registration go down. And I know some of Bianca's singing its praises, I think, in the chat, and it's well appreciated. So I hope that
it's a really fun course. It's just harder and harder to do. The course, I mean, it started out that the contract faculty was teaching it with 12 students, and then when it got to be 20, he said, no, it can't get any higher than this. And I was trying to keep it at 30, but I think it was 34 last time I taught it. We just don't have space on the campus for such big classes being that loud, that noisy. So I think there are some challenges Bishops is facing as a formerly small university, or a small university that used to have small classes and is now moving away from that.
I wonder if we can, anyway, I can talk with you later.
Oh yeah, that's a different conversation.
I wonder if we can ask the drama department for that space, because they will have the same problem too, right? They must have the space to teach those classes.
I really hope that, I think we should have a discussion with the drama department and find out which drama courses our teachers in general can be taking, because I really do mean it. I think every teacher should actually explore or experiment with a drama course, not just elementary or secondary. Getting back, I mean, at the time that I kind of had to take this course, I really had lost a lot of my excitement and passion about teaching. I wasn't really a happy person at that time, and getting back in that classroom, doing creative things with the students, being silly with people, and doing it week after week until I was actually enjoying it. This class really brought me back. And then a couple of years later, during the pandemic, the responses, the messages I got from students, the comments on the evaluation from the students, it really talked about, it didn't talk about me at all. It talked about them and what this course did for them during a very difficult time. It was my evaluation, but it really said almost nothing about me, but about how much that course and that space to just get together with a group of 4 or 5 people and being very silly, and how much that mattered to them. And that was a strange, and then that year worked better because it was all online. We didn't have to worry about space. We had it's as weird as it is, the drama course actually almost worked better as an entirely online course, because the students could have an enclosed private space and really let loose, and then turn out and then share a video later that was really wonderful. Bad dubbing theater. Did anyone else find a fun activity they want to point others to?
Actually, I have a question.
Yes.
So I'm working with very young students. I mean, we're talking like pre-kinder, kinder, first grade. I got a few second graders, but I'm very theatrical. And even when I like teach language, I'm always trying to like move around and make the shapes with my arms or something. You know, I change my voice, but I want to bring them into that more. But I can't. They don't really read. It's not their fault. Like, it's not that they're not readers. They're young. So I was wondering, like, do you have any ideas there for how I could get them, that they could bring in their drama sides, but I can't give them a script, or something. I don't know if it has to be visual, but and they don't have a lot of language either. So I wondered what ideas you had for that.
Build out from TPR stuff, comprehension-based stuff. Just a sec. I had a thought as you were. Some of the movement exercises. There's one where, like, movement exercises are fun to start with because this one has no right answer. Saying, okay, I'm going to make a sound, and you have to hold your body like that sound, and then you make these different sounds, and they have to represent that sound with their bodies. What language are they getting? They're getting you talking about these different things, sharing vocabulary. TPR activities are very good for students being able to participate and demonstrate comprehension non-verbally. So they might not be able to produce a lot of language, but you want to work with the language they understand and around TPR-like activities. A lot of stuff can be involved, point. Yeah, the teacher describes someone in the room and the students point. The students non-verbally demonstrate comprehension in exercises where the teacher is largely producing the speech, but the students are not at all inactive. Their bodies are very engaged in it. So yeah, there's a whole group of activities that I think would work for that.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, Trevor, I really appreciate the talk. I think I learned two things today. I mean, I know drama has been really useful for language learning, but I think you reminded me that how the purposeful and meaningful communication in the context, and this is something that they can learn so much from. And I think that is such an important point. So it's not just going there and do whatever they like, but they're also in learning how to communicate. And it is not just the language, but the speech, your expression, the whole body. How do you really communicate with meaning? That's one thing. And then second thing is I forgot what I wanted to share. It will come back.
Well, you'll have time to share it with me. Maybe not everyone
Yeah,
else.
Oh, there's the second.
I think one thing that I really want to emphasize.
I remember now.
You have it. Okay, go ahead.
You know, when you said you asked students to think of someone, pretend to be someone that they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it so interesting because, and you said it's freeing. We were also in another course, we're talking about there's latest research about how counselors are trying to ask the victims to use a second language to describe the traumatic experience because that can create that distance, emotional distance. They can be more freeing to speak in that language. And I find it, wow, this can be really beneficial because it's more freeing. They can because a lot of times when students are asked to speak in second language, they always feel a bit shy. But if you deliberately give them a role that is completely different from theirs, it might have very different results. So I'm just quite fascinated about that.
Me too. And Lozanov was a psychologist, so he might have. I've never liked the idea of giving my students names, but I did my first teaching in South Korea, where yeah.
My German teacher actually gave us a list of German. It was at the back of the textbook, and he said, pick one, pick the name that appeals to you. So we had ownership over it. The minute you give a student choice, they had sort of ownership. So that's
Yeah. Or, I mean, I'm not even comfortable. I wasn't comfortable in the Korean context, even insisting my students took an English name. So when I read Lozanov's thing, it kind of opened up another perspective on it, which is this could be quite liberating, um, a very freeing activity, as Sunny's saying. But I think there's one more thing I really want to emphasize is that drama techniques are traditional language teaching. As far back, I've only looked really at English related textbooks and the history of English language teaching back to around 1500. But I bet if we looked at the last 2,500 years of language teaching, we could make the argument that these dramatic activities are more traditional than the grammar-based activities, which kind of evolved around the grammar translation method in Germany for the teaching of written texts, or for the learning of English to handle written texts. And were inspired by techniques for teaching Latin as a dead language. And so I think we should uh, reclaim the idea of traditional language teaching, because traditions carry weight, and communicative language teaching is probably far more traditional than the grammar-based methods.
Okay, so we're approaching the end here. We've got about 3 minutes, and I'm just curious if there is one more little comment or question that we can sneak in, not too complex, before we wrap it up. No obligation. All right, I think we're good. I think, oh, Monica?
Oh, I was going to say, professors always ask complex questions, so we shouldn't weigh in.
I want to ask somebody a very simple question. Somebody said that becoming a professor, they'd become less comfortable being silly. Was that Monica? Why is that? Why is your silly factor gone down as a university prof? Mine has
Yeah.
too.
I don't know. I mean, there's a certain decorum that seems to be expected. Now I'm program director, and you know, it's and I think it's also there's a certain culture as well. I know before I moved to U Laval, we had a really maybe a slightly sillier culture at U Ottawa. You know, there was a professor's rock band, and they used to play at the school variety show. And we have kind of a different dynamic at U Laval.
Wow.
Yeah, like I mean, you know, so there was a kind of different dynamic, and
Okay.
yeah.
I feel that too.
But I miss it. I miss my silliness.
I'm trying to keep mine, get it back.
Monica, you can always be silly with me.
And I think we need our
Okay,
friends to be silly with.
Yeah, on that note, let's go ahead and wrap it up for today. Thank you so much for the talk, and thank you everyone for coming. It was really, really wonderful. Remember that if you'd like to get in on receiving emails in the future, please put your email in the chat. And I'm going to wish everyone a wonderful afternoon, and take care. Stay warm.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Trevor.
Okay.
So, Lindsay, oh, okay.
I'm going to stop the recording.